Willow Pierce had long ago decided that retirement should smell of old books and toasted scones, yet somehow her evenings now carried the scent of sawdust, grease paint, and the faint, fizzy tang of stage fog. 3 years earlier, she'd wandered into the Fernwood Community Theatre to donate a box of vintage playbills, and before she could say intermission, she'd been recruited as props master, resident tea brewer, and unofficial keeper of calm. Tonight, calm was in short supply. Opening night of the Scarlet Lion was only 6 hours away, and the cavernous backstage corridors buzzed like a beehive after someone whacked it with a broom. Actors paced tongue twisters, crew members wrestled with stubborn set pieces, and Marcy Huffman, the silver-haired director, was barking orders with the staccato precision of a military drumline. Willow set a tray of steaming mugs on a makeup table and scanned the chaos. "Anyone seen Damien?" she called. Damien Crowley, star of the show, possessor of cheekbones sharp enough to slice cheese and ego to match, was conspicuously absent from the pre-show warm-ups. Willow suspected he was off somewhere practicing his brooding. Or flirting. Possibly both. Instead of Damien, the understudy materialized at her elbow. Jessica Lake, 22, all coltish limbs and nerves. "I, haven't seen him," she murmured, eyes darting left and right, as though lines might fall out of the air for her to memorize. "Drink some chamomile," Willow advised. "Calm the butterflies, make them fly in formation." Jessica managed a shaky smile, accepted a mug, and hurried away. Willow turned toward the costume alcove, a curtained nook lined with wardrobe racks. She intended to fetch Damien's scarlet doublet for a quick lint rolling, but the moment she pushed aside the velvet drape, her breath caught. 3 of Damien's costumes, the doublet, a sweeping cloak, and the cream silk undershirt, hung in tatters. The fabric had been slashed in long, deliberate strokes, gaping like wounds. Threads dangled. Sequins glittered on the floor like spilled treasure. For a heartbeat, Willow simply listened to her pulse thunder in her ears. Then the librarian in her surfaced practical as tweed shoes. She snapped photos with her phone, closed the curtain, and marched to the green room. "Marcy," she said, low but urgent. "I need you. Now." The director followed without question. When she saw the damage, she pressed both palms to her cheeks. "We open in 6 hours." "Yes," Willow agreed, "and we're going to keep that curtain time. First we secure the scene. No one else in or out of this alcove until we know what happened. Second, we make a list of anyone who had access." Marcy swallowed. "That's nearly everyone. Actors, crew. Let's start small. Who's held keys today?" "Just me, Millie the seamstress, Owen in lighting, and Stan." Marcy's mouth tightened around the final name. Willow understood the tension. Stan Fortner, chair of the theatre board, had been muttering about budget shortfalls and whispering about selling the building to developers. A disastrous opening would strengthen his argument. "Call them," Willow said. "Ask them to meet in the rehearsal hall in 10 minutes. I'll gather evidence." Marcy hurried away. Willow knelt, careful not to disturb the glittering crime scene. She sniffed the air. A faint, sweet aroma, citrus, clung to the fabric. Orange blossom? Clementine? Odd. Damien preferred sandalwood cologne. She found the sewing shears still on their hook, blades clean. Whoever did the cutting likely brought their own weapon. When she stepped into the rehearsal hall a few minutes later, 5 faces turned toward her. Marcy. Millie Boone, the white-haired seamstress whose pincushion wristband resembled a medieval torture device. Owen Diaz, lanky and bespectacled, fingers perpetually smudged with gel paint. Stan, all blazer and forced smile. and Jessica, who had apparently been dragged here mid-vocal warm-up. "What's going on?" Stan demanded. "I have a conference call." "You'll reschedule." Willow folded her arms. Someone vandalized Damien's costumes. A collective gasp circled the group. "Who would do such a thing?" Millie whispered, horrified. "That's what we're about to find out," Willow said. "For the moment, no one leaves the building. Marcy, lock the stage doors. Owen, could the security cameras have caught anything?" Owen adjusted his glasses. "Only the alley door. The costume alcove isn't covered. Budget cuts, remember." Willow eyed Stan, whose face coloured slightly. "Indeed." She opened her notebook. "Let's go through everyone's whereabouts between 1 and 2 o'clock." The statements came tumbling. Marcy had been front of house fixing the ticket scanner. Owen was refocusing lights from a genie lift. Mila was in the wardrobe shop hemming trousers. Stan claimed he'd been in the lobby on phone calls. Jessica admitted she'd gone to the costume nook for her replacement bodice around 1:15, but saw nothing unusual. "Where was Rita?" Willow asked, recalling Damien's ex-girlfriend and co-star, famous for melodramatic exits. Rita Hart breezed in late, clutching a smoothie, and blinked at the question. She'd been at her car rehearsing lines, she said, brandishing earbuds. Willow's former career had taught her to catalogue details like a rare book index. She noted, Owen had paint on his sleeves, blue, same as the Act 2 backdrops. Millie's pincushion sported every colour of thread except scarlet, because she used a separate tomato for red hues. Jessica smelled faintly of citrus. So did Rita, though Rita's fragrance was sharper, floral, neroli, not simple orange. After she dismissed the gathering, Willow found Millie in the costume shop already measuring ruined fabric. "Can we salvage them?" Willow asked. "Oh, honey, I've stitched Civil War quilts out of ribbon scraps." Millie's eyes twinkled despite the tragedy. "Give me 3 hours, a pot of coffee, and absolute quiet." "You'll have it." Willow squeezed her shoulder. "And every pin we own." On her way to fetch coffee, Willow nearly collided with Damien finally sauntering inside, sunglasses perched despite the indoor gloom. "Where have you been?" she snapped, temper fraying. "Getting my vocal cords iced." He raised a to-go cup dangling with condensation. "Is that illegal?" "Only if you left your costumes to be murdered." She filled him in, watching irritation eclipse his vanity. "That cloak cost more than my first car," he hissed. "Find the culprit, Willow. I won't go on stage looking like a beggar." "Millie's repairing them. You may find humility useful in the meantime." She marched past, leaving him sputtering. Cozy mysteries, Willow reflected, seldom described how sweaty a sleuth became while jogging up and down 2 flights of backstage stairs. By 4 p.m. she had interviewed half a dozen additional crew members, combed trash bins, and located Damien's stage sword hidden beneath a coil of extension cords, its metal blade replaced by a foam prop from children's theatre stock. Sabotage, Part 2. She bagged the sword as evidence and checked Millie's progress. The seamstress had reconstructed the cream shirt, but the doublet would need creative patching. "Someone knew where to slash," Millie muttered. Avoided seam lines, went straight through the decorative panels. Malicious and knowledgeable. Knowledgeable. The word snagged Willow's attention like a burr on wool. Millie, the only true sewing expert, was beyond suspicion in Willow's opinion. She loved costumes as if they breathed. Jessica knew some stitching basics for her homemade Renaissance gowns. Rita, none. Marcy, minimal. But Jessica. Willow ducked into the dressing rooms. Jessica stood facing the mirror, practicing Damien's signature dramatic bow, as though testing the role on her shoulders. Willow cleared her throat. Jessica spun, cheeks flaming. Just stretching. Of course. May I look in your tote? Routine check. Willow used the same tone she once wielded to request overdue library books. Few refused. Jessica's tote bulged with makeup, a hairbrush, sheet music, and a cylindrical container of citrus-scented hand wipes. Willow's pulse skipped. Edging deeper, she found cloth scraps, scarlet brocade, stuffed into a side pocket. Jessica's eyes flooded with tears before Willow spoke. I didn't mean I only wanted a chance. Sabotage isn't counted as talent. Willow's voice was gentle but firm. Talk to me. Jessica collapsed onto the dressing bench. Damien is flaky. Last night he bragged he might get scouted by a regional rep and bail mid-run. Marcy promised me the role if he left, but that wouldn't help opening night. I thought if his costumes were ruined, he'd freak out and refuse to go on. Then the show could still open with me. Her shoulders shook. I was going to fix everything afterward. I love this theatre. I wouldn't let it fail. Willow sank beside her. You also switched his sword? Jessica nodded miserably. I didn't want him hurt, just humiliated. A line from Agatha Christie drifted through Willow's memory. It is ridiculous to condemn people in bulk. Jessica wasn't evil. She was young, desperate, blundering. But the show came first. We need those costumes intact. Where are the missing pieces? In my dance bag, upstairs in the loft. And the blade? I panicked and tossed it in the dumpster out back. Tears welled again. I glued sequins over the cut edges so Millie wouldn't notice the difference in fabric dye lots. I swear I'd have told someone after. We're past wishes. Willow took a slow breath. Here's what will happen. You will retrieve every scrap, apologize to Millie, and assist her until the final curtain. Afterward, Marcy and the board will decide disciplinary action. She paused. If you run, I will call the police and press charges. Jessica nodded as though her neck might snap. Together they collected the evidence. Jessica, to her credit, went straight to Millie and confessed, tears splattering the sewing table. Millie's stern expression softened into grandmotherly pity. She set Jessica to work threading needles. That crisis contained, Willow turned attention to the larger ripple, Stan. Because while Jessica had vandalized costumes, Stan still had motive to torpedo the theatre on a broader scale. And opportunity. She cornered him in the lobby near the concession stand, where he appeared to be measuring for improvements. Planning renovations? Willow asked lightly. He jumped. Just brainstorming. We could lease this space for private events, more revenue. Or sell to Finch Development for condominiums. That rumour has legs. Stan's gaze flickered. Sentimentality clouds judgment, Willow. Buildings cost money. And reputations cost more. When our audience hears about tonight's mishap, and they will, they'll find out you argued to install cameras backstage but withdrew funds last month. If you use this disaster as proof we need to close, it may look convenient. She watched satisfaction bloom when his expression pinched. The same principle worked on unruly library patrons. Let them imagine the consequences. 5 o'clock arrived. Costumes, miraculously, were wearable. The doublet bore a decorative applique to mask the worst damage, an embroidered lion Millie had cut from an old banner. Damien preened before the mirror, unable to decide whether fury or delight suited him more. He settled on theatrical gratitude, kissing Millie's cheek and Willow's hand. Rita floated in, lips pursed. I heard a rumour about Sabotage. The show isn't cursed, is it? Only blessed with drama, Willow replied. She caught the citrus floral scent again and realized why it had seemed wrong earlier. Rita's perfume was layered with jasmine and bitter orange, not the sweet clementine note from the costume alcove. Evidence had been screaming at her nose all along. At 6:30, the house opened. The lobby filled with chatter and the rustle of playbills. Stan disappeared to glad-hand donors. Willow stationed herself at the stage right wing, tea thermos in hand, mother hen to 30 nervous performers. Jessica, already in ensemble costume, sidled over. I finished zigzagging the hem, she whispered. Millie says it's the sturdiest hem in North America. Well done. Willow squeezed her arm. Remember, courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Jessica managed a watery grin. You sound like the quote board at the library. Old habits. The orchestra struck the first chord. The scarlet curtain shivered. Damien strode into the spotlight, cloak swirling, every inch the dashing lion of Carvermore, if one didn't know the cloak's lining was stitched only hours ago. Backstage, Willow listened to the opening scene through the god mic feed, tension draining bit by bit. No line flubs, no sword mishaps. When Damien drew the metal blade, Owen had retrieved the original from the dumpster. Its steel gleamed menacingly, solid and sure. Acton closed to thunderous applause. In the 15-minute intermission, Willow brewed fresh tea and slipped into the front of house. Audience members buzzed, delighted. She spotted Stan chatting with a city councilwoman, his earlier panic replaced by smug composure now that the performance was a hit. He caught Willow's eye and raised his glass in tentative truce. Perhaps, she mused, success would stifle his sellout dreams. Hard to argue for demolition when half the town had just witnessed theatrical magic. When the final curtain call ended, roses littering the boards, Willow joined the cast on stage. Marcy wiped tears from her cheeks. Damien pulled Jessica forward, bowing theatrically to her despite having no idea about her earlier misdeeds. Millie beamed, holding the patched cloak like a flag. Marcy seized the stage manager's headset mic and addressed the house. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause as well for our backstage heroes, Willow Pierce and Millie Boone, who saved opening night. The spotlight swung to them. Willow's cheeks blazed, but she curtsied. The audience roared. She could almost taste their gratitude. It was sweeter than any citrus. Later, as the theatre emptied and confetti of programs littered seats, Willow sat in the green room sipping lukewarm Earl Grey. Jessica appeared, red-rimmed eyes but calm. I handed Marcy a written confession, she said quietly. Whatever the board decides, I'll accept. Good. Take responsibility, then move forward. The theatre needs people who love it enough to protect, not sabotage. Would you give me a reference? Not right away, but someday. Willow folded the girl into a hug. When you've earned it, yes. The hallway lights dimmed, signaling closing procedures. Owen popped his head around the door. Strike meeting tomorrow at 10, Willow. Bring your superglue. I never leave home without it. She stood, joints protesting, and gathered her tote. Outside, the autumn night was crisp, the marquee letters glowing against the indigo sky. The Scarlet Lion sold out. Willow took a moment to savour the scene, laughter drifting from the pub next door, the metallic click of Millie locking the side door, the far-off hoot of an owl perched, perhaps, on the theatre roof. Mystery solved, costume saved, curtain triumphant. Retirement, Willow decided, might never smell of quiet libraries again. but the scent of sawdust, grease paint, and a hint of orange? She could grow very, very fond of that.